we're going to have a big square, and this represents all possible outcomes, right? So one possible outcome, as Brian showed, is C1, and the other possible outcome is C2. So we're going to focus on C1 in this one. And now let's say we have variables, but we're going to focus on one variable, and that's x1. So this is when x1 is true, and this down here is when it's not. So if you recall the equation shown in class, that is probability of C1 given x1. Of course, these two mean true. Actually, this one should probably be not C1. So if it's like C1, but it's not true, let's just notate it like that. Okay, so we're going to something like that. That's equal to probability of x1 given c1. Let me write that. It's kind of hard to write, but oops, x1 given c1 times probability of c1. You might not be able to see it, but c1. Okay, divided by probability of x1. Okay. So let's go through this step by step. So let's start on this part up here, the numerator. Specifically this one right there, probability of x1 given c1. So what that means is out of all of the c1s, when is it x1? That's right, that's this part up here, out of the entirety of c1. I think it's a good idea to switch colors. Let me do that. So it's this part up here, out of this part over here. Okay, so it's going to be that, multiplied by the probability of C1. What probability of C1 is going to be is that is going to be this part over here, so this left-hand side rectangle out of the entire rectangle. So out of here. So let's write that down. So let's go back to black. Okay, so probability of x1 given c1. That is little rectangle on the top left divided by tall rectangle. Probability of c1 is, that's a multiplication sign, tall rectangle divided by big rectangle. So that's the entire thing. So if you can think about it, you can kind of cancel these two out. And what you're left with is now little rectangle, which is x1 and c1 divided by big rectangle. And this is the numerator right there. So keep in mind this is the numerator. So I'll do denominator in, what color do I have left? Let's do purple. So denominator, probability of x1. And of course that means probability of this horizontal rectangle here, which represents x1, out of the entire thing. So let's show the denominator here. So that is long x1 divided by the entire thing. So entire thing. So now let's put numerator and denominator together. So of course they're division. So that involves dividing it, of course. I'll do that in gray. Is that visible? I guess so. Let's make it darker gray. Okay, hope that looks a bit different than black. If not, let's do green. I didn't do green yet. Okay, so numerator is this part right here. Denominator is this part right here. So now let's divide them. So you're going to have tiny divided by big. I'm just going to write big, B for big, divided by long divided by big. So now, if you know your division rules, you know these two cancel out. And what you're left with, actually let me write that down here, is the little rectangle on the top left, which is x1 and, oops, I can't draw an ampersand, and c1 divided by the long rectangle, and that is x1. So what do we have here? Now we have the probability of c1 given x1, or this would be x1, not xc. So now we have the probability of c1 given x1. Now the x1 here you can kind of ignore because it's already given, right? It's x1 given, it's c1 given x1. So this x1 over here, you can basically, it's like it's a given. So what you have in the end is p c1 given x1. Okay, cool. So this thing up here is right back to where we started. So hopefully that gave you a good visual understanding of this thing. And thanks for watching. Put any questions you have in the comments below. See you.